It's the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. Agenda item number 1. Information paper issued since the last meeting. Any question? No? Items for discussion at the next meeting. Well, the Secretariat has not issued any papers since the last meeting. In the next meeting, we will be discussing. Well, the next meeting will be held on the 18th of June 2024, 2:30 p.m. The administration proposes to discuss the following items, including progress report on research and development centers. That's item 1 on the list of outstanding items for discussion. Policy on implementation of the free trade agreements and investment agreements. That's the second item on the list of outstanding items for discussion. Any comment? No? So we will be discussing these 2 items in the next meeting. Agenda item number 3, World Trade Organization, key outcomes of the 13th Ministerial Conference. Let's invite the government officials to enter. Welcome. The secretary is still in South America for a meeting, is that right? He's coming back. Francis, please walk us through the paper, please. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. As the founding member of the World Trade Organization, Hong Kong firmly supports a rule-based, non-discriminatory and transparent multilateral trading system with the World Trade Organization. Hong Kong is a member of the World Trade Organization under the name of Hong Kong, China. From 26 February 2024 to 2 March 2024, the 13th Ministerial Conference was held. Secretary for ITI and other colleagues attended the conference. This marks the 30th anniversary of the World Trade Organization. Ministers reaffirmed at the MC13 the principles and objectives enshrined in the Marrakesh Agreement establishing the World Trade Organization and adopted the Abu Dhabi Ministerial Declaration. The paper set out the decisions and mandates adopted. I will talk about a key highlights. One of the key highlights is that the minister agreed to continue reinvigorating the work program on electronic commerce until the next ministerial conference or the 31st March 2026, whichever is earlier. Hong Kong, China has always supported this work program on electronic commerce, the moratorium in particular. Hong Kong, China will continue to participate in the discussion in order for it to be extended further. On dispute settlement reform, the MC13 agrees to reform the DS reform and to accelerate discussions in an inclusive and transparent manner. Hopefully, we will have a fully and well-functioning dispute settlement system accessible to all WTO members by 2024. And Hong Kong, China has always advocated for this second-tier repeal or appeal or review mechanism. We've been advocating for plurilateral trade agreements, and we have achieved some results in MC13. And we announced this joint statement initiative on e-commerce. This initiative is to enhance transparency and streamline administrative procedures and adopt investment facilitation measures, as well as to promote international cooperation. Hong Kong, China as an external economy and a major source of investment. Participation in this investment facilitation for development agreement will showcase our investment environment that is highly transparent. Our current framework is in line with the agreement. That is why no local legislative amendment is needed, and we don't have to change any investment procedures. Together with the WTO members who have signed the agreement, we will try to incorporate the IFD agreement into the WTO legal architecture as soon as possible. Under the Joint Statement Initiative on Surface Domestic Regulation, well, it's been in force in the MC13. There are a total 72 participants, including Hong Kong, China, whose surface trade together accounts for over 92.5% of the world total. The DR disciplines aim to cut red tapes and lower trade costs for service suppliers by improving the transparency, predictability, and effectiveness of relevant domestic measures that business have to comply with to supply their service. Most members, including Hong Kong, China, have incorporated the disciplines in our schedules. And the majority and the most favored nation principle have been applied to all WTO members. Also, the MC outcomes include the formal approval of WTO membership terms of Comoros and Timor-Leste, the first accession since 2016. The members will continue to support the reform of WTO to improve all its functions. In terms of agreement on fisheries subsidies, at MC12, members agreed on the Agreement on Fisheries Subsidies, AFS. We have briefed members on this subsidy earlier on in the panel meeting. There are 73 WTO members who have accepted the AFS, still 37 short to allow AFS to enter into force. On the 21st of August 2023, Hong Kong, China formally accepted the AFS, and we are prepared for it. After MC12, regarding the disciplines that have not achieved consensus, for example, overfishing, we will continue to discuss that, but as members have still some disagreements over the provisions, no consensus could be reached. I would also like to take this opportunity to brief members on negotiation under JSI on e-commerce. The Joint Statement Initiative on e-commerce is a plurilateral JSI on e-commerce to create a more transparent and facilitating e-commerce environment, reduce barriers to digital trade, and promote global trade and economic growth. While not on the agenda of MC13, the negotiation under JSI on e-commerce have entered the final stage. 90 participants, including Hong Kong, China, are intensifying discussion with a view to reaching consensus on the next of a potential final e-commerce agreement. The proposed elements include facilitating e-commerce, ensuring an open e-commerce environment, building trust in e-commerce, the regulatory principles of telecommunications for building a better framework for e-commerce. Hong Kong has a highly external and open economy. We have, the existing legal framework of ours compatible with that set out under the Joint Statement Initiative. Chairman, we will continue to engage in the work relating to the decisions and declarations adopted at MC13 and work with other WTO members to advance the ongoing WTO negotiations and reform discussions. So that's all from our presentation. Thank you. Francis. Now is the time for members to put questions. They are Mr. Ma Fung Kwok, Mr. Robert Lee, Mr. Edmund Wong, Mr. Sunny Tan, and Dr. Kennedy Wong. 4 minutes per member, please. First, Mr. Ma Fung Kwok. Thank you. MC13 proposes a moratorium on custom duties on electronic transmissions. I support this initiative. I'm sure that the business sector welcomes it. E-commerce has been on the rise recently. So has there been any analysis or forecast on the trend of global e-commerce development? If yes, please share with us that. Also on the benefits of WTO initiatives on Hong Kong, China. It is said that the second-tier appeal or review mechanism is still outstanding, and Hong Kong, China is disappointed about that. So I wonder why we're so disappointed, and how is this second-tier appeal or review mechanism related to us? Why should we persuade other members to set up this review mechanism? Thank you. Regarding e-commerce, we're a member of APEC. We've discussed the relevant subject in the relevant meetings. WTO wants to establish a global framework at the MC13. Discussions were mostly related to custom duties, and we think that this moratorium is beneficial to Hong Kong because we advocate a zero tariff and customs and free trade. As I mentioned, there is a plurilateral joint statement on consumer protection and transparent environment. Through our office in Geneva, we participated in the relevant discussion, and we incorporated our stands and views into it. As for the appeal or review mechanism, in WTO there are 2 tiers of a review and appeal. If disputes cannot be resolved, then the experts will look into it. If any of the parties is not satisfied with the report put out by the expert, then there will be a second-tier review or appeal. Member may remember that earlier on, U.S. asked the products manufactured in Hong Kong to be labeled as being made in China instead of being made in Hong Kong or Hong Kong, China. We experienced the same procedures, and in the report, it is said that Hong Kong won the case. The practice of the U.S. violated certain requirements of the WTO. But as there is not enough members in the appeal board, and the WTO is reviewing and reforming the mechanism. That is why we don't have this second-tier appeal or review mechanism yet in the WTO. Hopefully, after the reformation of the dispute settlement system, our case can be reviewed by having this second-tier appeal and review mechanism. Next, Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you. Thank you for giving us this presentation on the key outcomes of the MC13. I would like to ask a few questions. It is mentioned in the paper that there are some 120 members. that supported the incorporation of investment facilitation for development agreement into the legal architecture of WTO. But there were a few members that continue to oppose putting the request on MC13 agenda. I wonder why these members opposed to it. Should we persuade the few members who oppose to the request and tell us about the positive things that will be brought about by the IFD agreement? On the surface domestic regulation disciplines, I know that there were 72 participants that supported the DR disciplines to cut red tapes and lower trade costs. If relevant members violate the regulation or disciplines, for example, certain US and European countries may impose barriers on certain trade of certain products. Will there be any penalty?
Francis, thank you, Mr. Lee, for the question. On the first question, the IFD agreement, there are two types of agreements. One is plurilateral agreement involving many different parties. The other one is the multilateral type. This investment facilitation for development agreement is a plurilateral agreement. We have 164 members, and well over 120 are taking part. There are members who are in opposition, and they are not holding a particular position in this regard, whether they feel that all the negotiations and discussions must be taking place in a multilateral manner. Every single one should be able to take part. Like the AFS agreement on fisheries subsidies is a case in point. The opposition members are suggesting that in the WTO should we allow the plurilateral agreement, and work will be in hand to explain to these members that there should be plurilateral negotiations that should be allowed, and this would be beneficial to them. Now, with a plurilateral agreement, we would give the undertaking and all the WTO members will be able to enjoy the benefits even if they're not part of the agreement. The other one is the Joint Statement Initiative on Services Domestic Regulation. Now, this is about the service suppliers going into a new market. They have to fulfill the licensing requirements. They have to fulfill the academic qualification requirements. We do have these measures to facilitate their obtaining of their licenses. And if there are any problems, we will be assisting them in accordance with mechanism under the WTO. And one can also take cases for arbitration. Mr. Edmund Wong. Chairman, thank you. We see that the U.S. is raising tariffs on the EVs from the mainland. Going forward, there may be similar actions to be taken against Hong Kong. Has the MC13 discussed any such situation to prevent any bullying tactics adopted by big powers and also protect the interests of Hong Kong? Francis. Chairman, thank you. In the WTO, as members are aware, it is an organization that is promoting free trade. In the WTO, or indeed in the APEC, where the Secretary is attending, there are sessions for the ministers to talk about the global trend, the protectionism, the emergence of this negative trend, and so on. And also the measures adopted in the name of national security and so on. The member referred to the bullying tactic. Now, this is precisely why Hong Kong is attaching so much importance to the WTO mechanism, because this is a platform for us as a small economy. We can take advantage of the mechanism there. If indeed there is unfair treatment, we can take cases to arbitration, or we can certainly seek negotiation. There is such a mechanism available there, and we will be alive to the Sino-US trade war and also the latest situation. Where necessary, we will be following up on this. So Sunny Tan, Chairman, thank you. About these key outcomes, it was made clear that in terms of e-commerce, there is a consensus that we should follow up on this, and the current practice of not imposing customs duties on electronic transmissions or the moratorium will be maintained. And this is terribly important to Hong Kong. We are promoting e-commerce in the mainland or in other parts of the world, in particular ASEAN countries, and this is an important element for our development. But when I discuss the issues with the e-commerce platform, they are telling me that for countries like Indonesia, they do not encourage cross-jurisdictional e-commerce. They may not be imposing customs duties or tariffs. They may be resorting to other measures to stop this. If there are countries that are replicating such practices, then the trade barriers will be erected. So I'm wondering whether Francis can respond to that. We hope that the CEDB will be promoting more in this regard. Thanks very much, Mr. Tan. Now, today, there are two areas to do with e-commerce. The first one is the current practice of not imposing customs duties on electronic transmissions. And the second is there is the joint statement measures for the e-commerce, and that's JSI on e-commerce. And there are new initiatives and rules that will be put in place. Now, this is in the form of plurilateral fashion. It all depends on the market that we want to go into, or whether they are part of this agreement. If there are any measures that are not commensurate with the requirements, we can take some measures. Now, the member talked about the Indonesian market. When it comes to imports of goods and indeed any other issues, we can take advantage of the WTO platform through the ETO or the Bureau or the relevant parties. We can then highlight these for follow-up and discussion. Thank you. Dr. Kennedy Wong, Chairman, thank you. Para 19 refers to the JSI on services, DR, and there is the protection of the online consumers and also the e-commerce agreement. Now, this is beneficial for the consumers because this will give them a predictable environment. My question for the administration is this: we don't have any requirements regarding e-commerce. In terms of rules and regulations, are we going to be reviewing them to regulate the e-commerce to make sure that Hong Kong consumers will be able to benefit from more transparent, more predictable regulatory environment? The MC Ministerial Conference is taking place every 2 years. That a very good foundation has been laid for e-commerce. As a next step, how can we liaise with the mainland authorities on a TTT basis? E-commerce in the mainland is developing much faster than Hong Kong. So how can we get aligned with the mainland parties to explore more markets? And also the dispute resolution mechanism in 2024. In the WTO, there will be, they're seeking to have a well-functioning dispute resolution mechanism available to all. Now, there are issues that remain outstanding. Do we have any plan to make sure that the dispute resolution mechanism will be able to resolve the made in Hong Kong issue? Francis. Thank you very much, Chairman. Now, under the JSI on e-commerce, there are a couple of things there. First, all the members should have a regulatory framework governing e-commerce, and for online consumers, their rights and privacy will be protected. And there are also measures to guard against unsolicited e-messages. Here in Hong Kong, we do have legislation in place, like the Electronic Transaction Ordinance and Privacy Ordinance. We also have the legislation governing the unsolicited electronic messages. So we do have the legislation in place, and we looked at this together with other bureaus. At the present moment, through the legislative framework that we have in place, we should be able to cater for the situation. As to whether we need to revisit the provisions and see whether we should do more, we're prepared to do more. Consumers' rights, yes, indeed. When someone purchases something wrong or inappropriately, we do have the trade description ordinance in place. Now, the member also referred to the Made in Hong Kong saga. This is really dear to our heart. We hope that within this year, we should be able to see this reform completed, and this appeal and review mechanism will be incorporated. There are indeed, in addition to this particular case, many other cases that are held in abeyance because of the fact that the appeal and review mechanism has ground to a halt. So we hope that there will be an ultimate arbitration, and all the arbitration will be taking place there. Thank you.
Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Chairman. I have two questions. First, on public procurement. The government has been promoting IT development recently. SMEs and startups have new ideas and innovative products, but as they are just starting out and our local market is rather small, they have no place to apply their products and improve them. I think public procurement is a very important tool for us to promote new industries. But whenever we ask the government to make use of public procurement to help startups and SMEs, the government always said that we have to comply with the WTO regulations on fair procurement. As a result, SMEs and startups have to compete with multinational companies, and very often the bids submitted by large corporations would win. This tool of public procurement to support local companies have been lost. For mainland, their local governments support and protect their startups and SMEs so that these enterprises can grow. I hope that the government will look into how other WTO members make use of public procurement to promote local industry. Say, for example, Singapore, they have some exemption clauses, and on top of price tender, they have clauses under their tender documents that protect local industry and local enterprises. My second question on multilateral trade development. Under the Sino-US trade war, the US have not been regarding Hong Kong as an independent tax jurisdictions, and they ask products manufactured in Hong Kong to be labeled as manufactured in Hong Kong and to be manufactured in China, and they don't import semiconductors manufactured in Hong Kong. And the US see Hong Kong as just another city in China. Hong Kong have lodged a complaint to the WTO, and the WTO ruled that the US actually violated the regulations and rules. But the decision was not really binding. The US will not be withdrawing their practice. We have to promote multilateral trade. But it seems that we cannot just rely on WTO as a platform for dispute settlement and resolution. I hope that the government will deploy more manpower to establish, for example, multilateral trade agreements with different countries and participate in different trade partnerships and create more connections with different countries so that we will not over-rely on this platform of World Trade Organization so that we can consolidate our position as an international trade center. Thank you. Francis, please. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Dr. Hong, on government procurement. It's true that there are certain requirements under World Trade Organization. The premise is that we have to apply most favored nation principle to all WTO members so that there will not be any favorable treatment to local enterprises. As a result, other members will be faced with a more harsh conditions. Not all government procurements are subject to such requirement. There is a threshold. Only contracts above the threshold were subject to the requirements, and I know that the FSTB have been looking into how we can help our SMEs and by improving our procurement guidelines and procedures. Dr. Hong talked about the Sino-US trade war and the disputes between China and US on the labeling of products. As I've mentioned, I think that the dispute settlement reform is very important. We hope that the second-tier appeal or review mechanism can be incorporated so that our case will not stay at where it is, and hopefully we will have a final decision laid down. We also attach importance to bilateral and multilateral trade agreement. The Secretary is at Peru, and he said that we have reached some substantial conclusion on our trade agreements with Peru, and hopefully by end of this year we can sign the relevant agreement. We have been asking to join RCEP. Next, Dr. John Ng. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to thank the government for dedicating the efforts on this MC13. Member talked about IFD agreement. Over 100 members supported the agreement. There are a few members opposed to it. Can the government tell us which members opposed to the agreement and how we can enhance our liaison with them because they oppose to the IFD agreement under WTO? Other members also talked about the dispute settlement system. We have not reached a consensus in MC13. We are establishing an international mediation center. We've e-commerce have been discussed in the MC13. Money is often involved in trading, and we mostly make use of payment tools under SWIFT. Some countries cannot make use of currency under SWIFT. We are developing central bank currency, and we have Web3. So I wonder how these or were these alternatives considered under WTO. On IFD agreement, there were not a lot of members opposed to it. I perhaps should not share the names of these countries, but they are mostly developing countries. They do not oppose to the provisions under the agreement, but they question whether there should be such framework under WTO. We will try to persuade them. On dispute settlement system, through the expert panel and the appeal and review mechanism, the WTO is looking into incorporation of elements of arbitration into the framework. We don't necessarily have to make use of WTO. We can make use of the mediation platform that we have. At APEC, Hong Kong will be promoting online dispute resolution mechanism. CDI. At the Ministerial Conference in Peru, there has been discussion on how we can help SMEs participate in international conferences and how we can help women or minority groups to participate in trading. We shared at the meeting the e-payment and e-commerce methodology. Can you also talk about e-payment or payment as a whole? The Hong Kong Monetary Authority have implemented several cross-boundary payment tools. Because WTO is about formulation of rules and regulations that should be transparent, non-discriminatory. Perhaps we should not discuss, that's why we did not discuss payment issues there. But as for new ideas and measures on payment that we have, I think that we should promote them on other occasions. Thank you. Francis, I'm glad to hear that the MC13 have achieved some substantial outcome. Members agree to not impose custom duties on electronic transmissions until the next ministerial conference. It has laid down a stable business environment for global e-commerce development. After the pandemic, Hong Kong's economy have shrunken, and we have to work on it. Last week, I went to Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore to learn about what business opportunities they have to offer. I think that we should promote our advantage in those places. We don't have office in each and every ASEAN countries, so staff members of those offices have to travel to different countries to work, and they spent a lot of time on arranging for our tour. So how can the ETO step up their efforts on their persuasion and explanatory work of promoting Hong Kong? We should not just rely on the Ministerial Conference of WTO because it lasted only a few days. We have to work on it for the rest of the year. We have geopolitical issues. US and some European countries try to attack us. And we were not able to overturn some of the decisions that they have made. I hope that you can convey this message to the Secretary. Now, coming back to Middle East, Asian countries, all these emerging markets, how do we step up economic cooperation? Can you tell us about that? Thank you, Chairman. The President of Legislative and several members went to ASEAN countries. I think that this facilitates our work. ETO mostly facilitate government-to-government liaison, and they also work with the business sector. The Invest Hong Kong and Trade Development Council work with the commercial and industrial sectors. I will convey what you said to the Secretary. As for ETO or the TID, apart from participating in the WTO meetings, We also work out trade and investment agreements with different countries and cities. This will improve our relationship with our trade partners. We have created a trade agreement and an FTA with Asian countries. You see that our service and goods trading volume have improved. Apart from this, the chairman also mentioned Middle East. We have some trade agreements with Kuwait, UAE, and Bahrain. I think that this will facilitate good tradings and service trading. I will relay your views to the bureaus.
唔係話淨係
Well, it's not just a question of us and the emerging economies increasing trade. The U.S. is stepping down on us, and a lot of the entities making procurement in Hong Kong are leaving Hong Kong, and the business community reluctantly decamped Hong Kong to the Asian countries. And we need to have the support in this regard. So it's not a question of buying more durian products or palm oil products. It's more than that. Obviously, we'd like to have more products exported to these places, but at the same time, we'd like to extend the manufacturing chain, and we'd like to have the products designed and manufactured there as well. Any further questions? If not, so much for this item. The next item is any other business, any AOB item you'd like to bring up? If not, the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all very much.